Welcome to Porphyria Awareness Week. This is a whole new chance we've had to try something a little bit different, which kind of emphasises the whole aspect of so many people can't get out in the light. This is a new approach. Zwift is something a lot of people might not have heard of. So being able to get some exercise indoors while still experiencing some of the outdoors. So I think the first thing we're going to do is to introduce you to Antony and Ian, who both are affected by porphyria in different ways, as in Ian is married to Sue, who has acute intermittent porphyria, and Antony has EPP. So it affects them in very different ways. And a little bit later in the ride, we'll maybe, when Antony and Ian are a bit out of breath, I'll tell you a little bit about the rest of the events that we've got going on in Porphyria Awareness Week. So, Ian, I'll come to you first. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you have a relationship with porphyria?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So as this says, my name's Ian. I'm married to Sue. I met Sue in 2007, and that's when we got together. And roughly a year after that, when she had her first attack, which was pretty scary, to be honest. Only knew things from what Sue had told me, and that's, Liz, based on your experiences. Yeah. And when all of that happened, incredibly sort of scary times. Everyone was very, very much in the dark about what to do. So yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind 14 years since I first met her. Her last attack was 2018, so just under 3 years ago now. Yeah, that's me. I'm the husband, sort of living with the illness. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, and Antony, we'll come to you. Tell us a little bit about how you're affected by porphyria.
Yeah, I'm an EPP patient. I was only diagnosed with EPP when I was 32, so lived pretty much most of my life, really, I guess, without knowing what was affecting me, why I was getting burning and sensations, really, like fire and swelling when I went out in the sun. I'd always been keen on sport and wanted to participate, so one of the things I found as growing up was that I was really limited in terms of football, cricket, and I always enjoyed cycling, but when I used to go on a bike ride, I used to find that afterwards I'd be in agony, not from the bike ride itself, but from the effect of the sunlight on me. So the next few days quite often would be spent indoors recovering.
So with that in mind, Antony, do you want to tell us a little bit about what Zwift's all about?
Yeah. So one of the great things about Zwift is it's basically a computer game, but it's a real life simulation. So you can probably see Ian on his bike and me just about pedaling away there. What it does, it links your computer and your bike together for what is actually a very, very close simulation to real life riding. So there's lots of routes, there's different worlds in here. You can ride in the Zwift world itself, or simulations of Harrogate in the UK, London, some of the Tour de France stages, some routes over in the States. It's really good. Lots of training plans as well, so you can follow an exercise regime to really become quite fit in here without just sitting there like a hamster. You actually feel like you're actually on a bike ride. But for me, I guess all the benefits of not being exposed to the sun, because I'm in the house at the time.
Yeah.
So a day like today, when it's really sunny outside, it's great. I can ride as long as I want, and now I'm going to be okay.
Excellent. So with that in mind, for most people, the main challenge on getting out on a bike is their level of fitness, or even getting a sore bum. What do you think that each of you, and I'll come to you first, Antony, what's the main challenge that you think of and that you face when you're going on a bike ride?
I think for me, the first thing is obviously making sure we can keep up with the lads. That's just a natural competitive thing. But the very first thing is, what's the weather going to be like? So if I agree to go on a ride, I'll wake up in the morning, but almost before I've opened the curtains, I'm trying to assess what it's going to be like, how covered up I need to be, and how much risk is going to be involved. If we take that to another level, if everyone suggests a trip somewhere, for example, in the summertime, when everyone loves to ride, that my first reaction is pure fear. To then have to rationalise and say, can I do sufficient to actually deal with that trip without sort of my EPP triggering in an alarming manner.
Yeah, and what precautions you need to take to do that. And so for you, Ian, it's very different kind of challenges that you face in terms of that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, very different. So for me, it's more around the planning of it. And very, very early on, when friends sort of organise group rides, that kind of thing, I'd sign up to it. In certain events as well, just around like Norfolk, that kind of thing. But it's all about on the day or on the weekend. If Sue was well enough, if she wasn't, now we've got a 4-year-old, so sort of childcare has to be taken into consideration. In the early days, it was more around whether if Sue was well enough for me to be able to go. So, quite a few times I'd let friends down, kind of bailing at the last minute, that kind of thing. Which that's just not me. I don't like doing that kind of thing. But sometimes you have to, because you got to support your partner. So completely different, as you say. For me, it's more around the planning aspect of it, and can I afford to be sort of 30, 40 miles away from home if Sue suddenly needed me, but and I couldn't do that kind of thing, so I had to sort of cancel those kind of things.
Yeah,
so slightly different for me.
And you were also involved in actually administering her treatments as well, weren't you? So
Indeed, yeah. So I was trained up from the home care team, trained up not to do the full treatment, but certain parts I could do, putting the needle in, water caps, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was there to support Sue and that kind of stuff as well. If she needed emergency treatments, it comes a bit flippant, but you don't want to be too far away from home kind of thing. You want to be able to be there to support them. So I had to take that kind of thing into consideration as well.
So following on from that, do you think that Sue's porphyria has impacted on you as a husband and kind of carer, and has impacted on your approach to cycling and to exercise in general?
It has, yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, like going out for big rides, I miss that kind of thing. I don't do it anywhere as much as I used to. I've done like the big events, obviously for the fundraising, which I think we'll come on to in a bit. But I've when you're doing big events like that, you do have to put some hours of training in kind of thing. So otherwise, you're going to be very underprepared for it. So the good thing for me is I was sort of like 4 or 5 miles away from work, so I could use that as exercise every day for 5 miles to and from work, which was good. That keeps the legs going. So it was more about that for me, and I'd kind of push myself on those journeys, albeit short. I'd use those as like sort of bursts of fitness rather than going out for an hour or two at weekends kind of thing. So yeah, you do have to adjust for definite. And as I say, it's more around the planning of it and not letting friends down, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I guess, Ian, that it's not just cycling. I guess that impacts on a whole load of areas of life for you then. And, for the whole family as well. Not even though you don't suffer from porphyria, there's some impact, I guess, there.
It does, yeah. It does slightly, yeah. Just like input into the personal life as well. In the early days, our lives were greatly impacted. Sue was made redundant from work, which obviously meant tightening the purse strings, that kind of thing. We had to downsize where we were living. All of that stuff came into play as well. So not just from a sort of your personal sort of lifestyle, your work lifestyle, just changing everything about the way we sort of live, basically. But it's all turned out good. It's not a bad thing. You kind of those kind of experiences challenge you, don't they? So it's not doom and gloom. It's just the way you react to it and the way you sort of come through these things, which has been fine. So.
Whereas for you, Antony, it must have really impacted not just on the rest of your life, but particularly on things like exercise and cycling, and you've approached how you can manage these things.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself sort of compromised all the time in my first reaction, rather than let's go and get out there in the morning, is okay, how do we get out there in the morning? Yeah, as I said, I was very keen on sport. I love being outdoors when I can be. So I think ultimately my career decision, I would have loved to have been a mountain leader. I gave it a go because I didn't know I got EPP, but I just couldn't make it work from the safety point of view of clients. I just wasn't there. I wasn't present enough when I was out suffering from EPP. So total failure on that one. And it compromises family life. It really does. Today, great bright day outside. Lockdown restrictions easing. Susan and Leah would first thing, they'd love to go to the beach, I guess, for a walk. For me, that would be just red flags. Sort of put me in a real juxtaposition about how do you put yourself at risk, but continue to participate as a normal family member and give your family some enjoyment as well.
Yeah.
So I'd probably put myself at risk just to try and do something normal and then suffer for a couple of days afterwards.
And that puts you out of life again for another further couple of days at least.
Yeah, and work performance
again.
Work performance as well. You're tired, recovering, you can't concentrate the same.
Yeah.
Fatigue. Trying to work with pain is not easy.
No.
So ultimately, it does have an impact on wider areas of life.
Absolutely. So coming back to the whole Zwift and cycling aspect, because seeing as that's the main focus of this little event, I mean, I don't know an awful lot about cycling. I've obviously heard of things like the Tour de France, 3-week race around France, but definitely not the kind of thing, something that someone with EPP could tackle. But what I do know is that there's lots for cyclists travelling to France and challenging themselves against some of the classic climbs. That's a real ambition for a lot of people. So 2 of those climbs you guys have some experience with. So, and there's probably quite a few people who don't know anything about those. So, Ian, I'll come to you. Do you want to tell us about the now I'm not sure on pronunciation.
Alpe d'Huez. Yeah. Well, I call it Alpe d'Huez. I may have the pronunciation wrong. So yeah, sure. Yeah, it's so I my experience with it is I've seen it on TV. I've never done it. I'm not a climber. I really aren't. We're climbing right now, I think, as well. Which is why my breathing's gone a bit. So I mean, I live in Norfolk, so Norfolk is incredibly flat. So a speed bump to me is a hill. So it's Alpe d'Huez is one of those iconic routes. Featured in the Tour de France quite a bit. Obviously, it's if the view from above, very, very sort of noticeable. There's 21 bends winding up the mountain. I think it's 8.5 degrees sort of incline. Which is pretty steep. Yeah. I think they recommend. I think the pros can do it in about 50 minutes. So probably for the likes of me, it'd be about an hour and a half, I think, to climb that. But it's one of those, when you see the top-down view on TV, it's just that big, long wind, 21 bends, as I say, hairpin bends kind of thing, winding up the mountain. So, which you can also do on Zwift. When you get to a certain level on Zwift, it unlocks it. And you can do that and challenge yourself. And the good thing about that, as you know, certainly for the likes of Antony, you can do it in the comfort of your own home. A lot of people will say, yeah, it's not the same. It's not the same as being out on the open road, but certainly to challenge your legs and challenge your mindset as well to be able to do it. You can just sit there and plod away over probably an hour and a half to get it done. So all good stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something else you brought up about the mindset aspect. Actually, and living with any long-term condition requires a really strong mindset, and people often don't realise that they actually have that within them until they end up having to use it. Anthony, do you want to tell us a little bit about your climb 112?
Yeah, I think 112 is, like Alp Duo, which I mean, as Ian says, it's just one of those climbs that you see on TV, you want to go out there and do it. But 112 it's got an iconic place in the Tour de France, especially for British cyclists. It's about 21 kilometres long, the climb is, so 13.5 miles of climbing, 1,600 metres you go up in altitude, so that's 5,300 feet, which is sort of 1 and a bit times Ben Nevis. So, for the pros, around 55 minutes an hour. For the average Joe, you're looking at 2.5, 3 hours, depending on your fitness there. So it's something that a hell of a lot of cyclists go and challenge themselves. I'd love to go and do it, but when you look at 112, it starts down in the trees, but then it gradually opens up. It comes above the tree line, and then the top of it can only be described as what's like the moon. So absolutely no shade, just light reflecting off limestone all over the place.
That would be
so if you think of an environment for an EPP person to go, it's in the south of France, in Provence. It's unless you get
about the
one of the very really rare rainy days down there, that's just off the scale in terms of risk to take on, but something that a lot of people I know have either done or got an ambition to go and do. As Ian says, one of the benefits of indoor cycling like Zwift is it does mean that I can get myself or keep myself reasonably fit, so that when I do go out for a ride, at least I've got a chance of keeping up with people.
Yeah.
So it's a little climb over there.
It's quite good that you can pit yourself against these kind of climbs, putting on.
You can do. So for an EPP patient, both of those things, it's not like the same thing, but you can really give it a go. And once you're into exercise at that level, you forget the fact. You're just beating yourself against the clock. So I had got an Alp Duo yesterday, and sort of totally gassed at the end, but good climb.
Yeah, and something that actually even most people who are maybe actually quite unfit would never be able to tackle that kind of a challenge in their life. Or even if you do a little bit or very slowly, you can tackle that at home, no matter what your fitness level, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So it just might take you a long time. So I know this is probably the first time you guys have ridden together on Zwift, but you've both ridden together before, haven't you? So because you both did in the same year the Ride London 100. So how did that go?
It was great. I mean, it's great. I mean, Ian's in Norwich, I'm in Manchester, so it's great to be able to sort of ride. You can see the two of us on screen there. We have a virtual meter, but the first time I met Ian was in London for the Ride 100. We got up about 5 o'clock in the morning, was it, Ian?
Yeah, about that,
to the start line.
Yeah.
So, quite lucky before the sun was really up, and also myself, the prospect of 100 miles, thankfully a very cloudy day. So Ian was there in t-shirt and shorts, all set for good weather, and ended up a bit cold, and I was wrapped up in full EPP gear and sort of nice and comfy, to be honest. But,
that's the one thing for me, Anthony. That's the one thing for me that really hit home, because it goes without saying, 5 minutes into a ride, you get incredibly warm. It doesn't matter what the weather is outside. You can be raining, it can be blowing a gale, but you still get very, very warm on a bike. So that really hit home. Me seeing you, obviously you were covered up as much as you could be to protect yourself. And my first initial thought was you're going to be so hot, but that's just one of those things that you deal with and you dealt with a plum kind of thing. So
you deal with and just ride as fast as you can to get around as quick as you can to stay out of the sun as much as you can, I guess. So the fitter you are, the easier it is.
Yeah, I suppose that very much highlights the differences in the way you have to approach the ride completely.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to try something that was out there, and also on behalf of the Porphyria patients with EPP, with other Porphyria's awareness raising, and some good fundraising opportunity as well.
Yeah, because we're always, lots of charities and us included, we have lots of opportunities to do various either personal challenges, whether that be a challenge that you set yourself on your own, or lots of organised sporting events and things like this. There's the Ride London that we're talking about now. There's things like Great North Run or the virtual London Marathon that's running at the moment. So in addition to anything that you could set yourself personally, there's always lots of opportunities to get involved with raising funds and being engaged with charities and with the BPA. So
for me, sorry, there's just one thing. For me, it was on the day. It was great because, like Antony said, we met very, very early on. I think we stayed together for over half the route, for over a good 50 miles, which again is good going, because the thousands and thousands of people that do Ride London, it's quite a challenge to do that and to keep together. But that was good. One thing that really did make me smile, there's a lot of people who do it. Obviously, they're kitted out in this kind of attire. But loads and loads of different charities doing it. A lot of people had like their names on the front or their names on the back. Me and Antony didn't, but I certainly got quite a few people shouting at me, "Go BPA, go BPA," which I thought was quite amusing. Other people were being called by their nicknames, that kind of thing. But the level of support you get, certainly when you leave London, sort of like going through the London suburbs, and then when you come back in as well. I'd encourage anyone to do it, and of course, obviously, do it fundraising for the BPA as well.
Yeah. So did that make you feel quite emotional? Because I've been, I've been at the Great North Run when people have been running it. Obviously, I've not been able to run it, but actually, just the level of heightened emotion that's there, it was amazing. It just carries through.
Incredible. When you go down the Mall. At the end of it, up towards Buckingham Palace, and there's just lined either side, people hitting the boardings, waving banners, flags, all sorts, just cheering you on, and you kind of get that extra level of energy. It was incredible, and I don't mind saying it brings a tear to your eye when you cross that line. You feel so emotional. The kind of you're raising awareness, you're raising some funds as well, and there's that that sense of achievement that you're doing something as well for yourself. So, very emotional. Don't mind about that.
And Antony, you've done other things too, haven't you? So, maybe tell us a little bit about some of the other cycles that you've done.
Well, I think the thing about the the Ride London was ultimately it was a one-day ride. So if I had a big blow up, I'd book the next day off work. I was just going to go and sort of suffer for the art, if you know what I mean. So, knowing that I'd achieved something and to raise some funds along the way. And as Ian said, riding on those closed roads was brilliant. But there's a bigger challenge thrown my way, which was the London Paris. And I knew the people I was doing it with. I was, technically fitter than them. My first thought was horror. I want to do it. How the hell do I do this? It's 3 days riding where you're not in control, but equally you have the chance to ride out of London on closed roads with motorbike experts. Full pro treatment effectively, and then right through France into for 2 days with motorbikes closing down the road all around you, so no cars to worry about, and ultimately finishing on Sunday afternoon around the Arc de Triomphe in Paris.
Unbelievable.
Again, with all the cars stopped. So
that must have been somewhat emotional too.
So the first thing is, I really want to do that. The second is, that's not possible. It's just not going to work for EPP. It's all within EPP. Even in early September, how the hell do I do it? So, I spent the best part of a month racking my brains as to do I risk it? Do I not? Do I take on the financial risk of sort of participation, and then also letting people down in terms of, you know, you committed to raising funds and then you find you're not going to be able to do something. So for me, yeah, everyone else was up and running, raising funds, just buzzing about it for months. And the first month I was just, okay, how do I break this down? How can I achieve this? So I did a lot of research into how the organisation was set up. What were the options for me if I did get an EPP episode? And the good thing, I guess, was the real thing was that there was what I call a broom wagon, which for anyone who did struggle on the day, say had a bike failing or just got tired, they could sort of put the bike in a trailer and jump in a coach and get to the next hotel. So my decision was ultimately based on that. Yeah, that I knew that if I had EPP breakdown on that ride, because there was such great support there, that I could get to the next stop, or even just stop at the side of the road, throw my bike in the van, pick myself up, and get to the hotel. And then if necessary, miss the next day, and then try the last day, or miss both days, whatever. Yeah, there's an insurance policy there. So I think that ultimately gave me the freedom of mind, or the peace of mind to take that challenge on.
So would your advice be just to generally try and do whatever you want, but you've got to research it, you've got to look into it fully? How do you think people should approach it if they're wanting to do a challenge themselves but have a condition that they've got to think about?
I think you've got to go. You've got to go for it. If you think it's remotely possible, if you think it's physically possible for you to do it, then you've got to give it a go. You've got to try and make it possible. Because, when you start talking to people, when you use your own expertise, your own mind, your determination, there's quite often a way, it might not be how you want to perfectly, how we want to do that thing, but you can find a way of doing these things as one-offs. Yeah. Going there unsupported has been a totally different kettle of fish, but make things happen. And again, ultimately got lucky with the weather. Second day it was absolutely chucking it down. So everyone else was riding in misery, getting cold, and I was just loving the fact that we've got mud coming out of the fields and flying up off wheels. It was perfect conditions for me. So sometimes fortune favours the bold, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on another aspect there that I just want to bring up for a second, if that's all right. You mentioned that all of the people that were doing it with you knew and they knew about your condition. So maybe you just want to touch on the importance of that for us.
Yeah, well, so I guess, it's about, by sharing what my limitations were with those. I mean, on that occasion, I was riding for a friend who'd suffering from Hutchinson lymphoma, so almost died at one point. He was coming back, and his goal was to do that ride. It was his dream. So riding for that charity, but having 4 or 5 people there who also knew what my issues, limitations were, I didn't feel like a stranger in the group.
Yeah.
And it made it easier for me to integrate with the other riders and didn't feel like a total freak or a weirdo. And knew that, if I had to bail, then I didn't have to try and explain it to anyone. I could just deal with myself, and that they would take care of me, and also help other people understand what had happened as well.
Yeah. And Ian, do you think that's an aspect that you have to kind of consider with Sue? How much do you kind of explore support mechanisms?
Yes, certainly from my perspective, like for when you're doing big events like that, any training or any big rides you're going to do, you usually call on family or friends for support. I know in the past, I think for one of the Ride London events, Sue travelled up north to be with family, just so she had that sort of that level of support when I wasn't there for the weekend.
Yeah.
Another weekend she was there with me, so she came down to London. But again, she wasn't up at 5 a.m. in the morning. She joined us on the finish line in the park next to Buckingham Palace. So it's just sort of, yeah, it's just planning it in a bit with a bit more care and attention, I guess. And certainly from the training aspect, like I say, you try and plan ahead, but there was always that element you didn't want to let people down if you had to bail at the last minute because Sue might not be feeling 100%, that kind of thing. So for me, slightly different. I mean, the good thing is, early days, I'm not going to lie, friends and family really didn't know too much about the condition at all. Now they do, and they get it, and they kind of understand. So it's not, it's never a problem now. So, but it's just all about, like this week is all about, like the awareness, just making people aware of what's going on and what the situation is. For me, one thing that I did want to add is it's sometimes really difficult to get people to understand because it's like an invisible illness. AIP.
Yeah.
It really is, and the amount of people who still comment that Sue doesn't have a drink, that kind of thing, because they have no idea that, I hate using this phrase, that there's something wrong with her type thing. They've simply got no idea because she looks well and she looks fit and healthy kind of thing, but it's just it's obviously it's on the inside where things are going on sort of thing. So that's still sometimes a challenge, but close friends who I would go out on a bike with, they get it, they understand it. So, but yeah, early on it was definitely a challenge. Yeah,
and that must be something you've experienced too, Antony.
Yeah, I think the most difficult thing with EPP is really because it is invisible. Yeah, you can't show people the pain, and because the reaction starts often before you even get a swelling in the skin, and you're in agony at that point. People are saying, "What's the matter with you?" So being able to describe that to people and then being aware of it, it's a massive step to actually open up like that. And sometimes, when you've got friends and people around you who are aware of that, they then start pitching in with the planning. And even, if I'm getting a bit lackadaisical, if I'm out on a ride or something like that, people say, "Right, man, you got your skin covered up, the sun's out, you need to cover that up, get a shirt on." That they help me along the way, and it's a burden shirt. So once you've done that, it often will work to your favour as well.
Yeah, you can maybe do it a little bit longer. Yeah.
But as Ian says, it's with the porphyrias especially, they're not illnesses that you can see.
No.
There's not a disability that you can see. I'm riding a bike with my hands at the moment. It's on the stand, but the problem is it's an invisible one, and even one of the worst experiences for me was when I was sitting on a NICE panel. One of the actual panel of the NICE committee, and we were talking about whether afamelanotide should be approved or not, turned to me and said, "I've seen a lot of people in the room. A lot of them are really suffering and being visibly ill." He said, "You look like a fit, healthy guy. Nothing." Effectively saying nothing in comparison, and that just cut me to the quick. For me to even get in that room and sit up on that panel was a really big step and hard work. And then to be almost insulted like that, when all the work you do on a personal level to try and avoid episodes of EPP, to try and maximise what you can do with that limitation, it's really hard to take. So invisibility is a relative factor.
It is a really important factor.
Coming back to the point, if you can share that with people, it really does help. Yourself from an emotional point of view and a sort of emotional strength and mental strength point of view, but also, from a support point of view as well.
Yeah, and having that network that you can trust, opening up to a few people to really make sure that you have that support mechanism in place.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, what I was going to ask next is just any overall thoughts on how cycling and keeping fit helps you deal with the porphyria and life in general, really. Shall I come to you, Anthony, first, and then we'll come to you, Ian?
Yeah, I guess for me, I think it's like, yeah, exercise. It's one of those things which it's a known benefit that, you know, people exercise. It helps you get away from the normal day-to-day stress of life. You know, a fitter body is a healthier body in many ways. So yeah, it helps you recover like that.
Yeah.
And research, like, into pain and so on. It's also shown that exercise can have a positive effect on being able to deal with pain. So that, there are lots of benefits, but it's just really the obvious one. So keeping fit, it means that when there is an opportunity to do something, you're much more able to take advantage of it and get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Ian, come to you. How do you feel like?
I wholeheartedly agree, to be honest. I think the only thing to add to that really is certainly, if you think of the past year, everyone's had those challenges the past year with this kind of thing, and doing this kind of thing is a great way to keep the legs spinning. I've never been a runner. I just don't have that mindset to do that. I'd always try and find cut corners and shortcuts to get back home. So being on a bike is certainly my favourite sort of form of exercise. And certainly when, the challenges of the last year, certainly, this kind of stuff is just good. It's good for your body and your mind, I think. So
that's the other thing I was going to touch on. Do you feel it has a little a mental health aspect as well?
Certainly, yes. Certainly, getting out and about, definitely. There's always that term about sort of blowing the cobwebs away, and I think certainly it's good for that. For me, very, very different to Antony, but getting out on a nice sunny day with the breeze in your face, it is lovely, and just sort of getting away and just escape for an hour or two, and it's really, really nice to do that. Yeah. Sometimes, you've got to make the best of both worlds, kind of thing. So sitting in the conservatory right now, being on this kind of thing, it's still good, but it doesn't beat the open road, but it's a really, really good alternative kind of thing. So very, very different for Antony, obviously, with taking the weather into account as well. But yeah, it's good for the mind. It helps to sort of just clear yourself and reset, kind of thing.
Well, I guess the other thing for you, Ian, as well, if Sue is having a sort of tough time with the porphyria, you could get some exercise done there as well.
Yeah.
But still be right on hand.
Exactly.
With childcare, etc. It's not saying 4 hours out on the bike with the lads and doing the
hours. That's right.
No,
that's very true. Yeah, but certainly since our little one was born 4 years ago, that was certainly the thing. Yeah, the fact that you can just get on this and you're in the next room, basically, like you say, you're not 20, 30 miles away, and you've suddenly got to get home for anything, kind of thing. So yeah, so it's much more beneficial for this. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also just gives you time to just clear your mind a little bit from things if things have been tough.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So shall I just take a few minutes just now, and I'm just going to mention a little bit about the other things we've got going on through the Porphyria Awareness Week, just in case anyone's unaware. So today we're on Sunday the 11th. You guys have been doing this. On Monday we've got Purple Food Day, so who knows what that could concoct when people are able to make purple foods. Obviously there's the opportunity, possibly not so much in COVID times, but to raise funds and things in that way too. But on Tuesday evening, we've got a live Zoom session for people with EPP and the skin porphyrias. So that's a really good opportunity to come and have an informal chat like this with people with EPP or with any of the skin porphyrias where it's affecting you. On Wednesday, we've got a pajama day, trying to get people involved in school and work as sponsored events. On Thursday evening, we've got another interactive Zoom session, but this time it's for the acute porphyrias. Again, it's creating those connections and that support network. So we're encouraging people to sign up for that too. On Friday, we've got Wear Purple Day or Purple at school or work, and hopefully getting people to donate to the BPA. And then on Saturday the 17th, we're trying something a little bit different as a bit of a family session. So 3 till 4 in the afternoon, we've got a family scavenger hunt and a mini quiz. So that'll be completely bedlam and hopefully lots of fun for getting people and their kids running around the house, grabbing things and bringing it back to us to hopefully get a bit more engagement in the day too. So that's a little bit about the rest of the week that we've got going on in Porphyria Awareness Week. But coming back to some questions for you guys, and these are some of the ones we've been asking during the week. What do you think is one of the hardest things that one of the worst impacts of the porphyria on your lives? And I'm going to come to you, Ian, first. What's the worst impact?
Okay, early on, the worst impact was the financial impact. Sue losing her job, being made redundant. She was on to a damn good career, to be honest, and that sort of ended, quite abruptly, which she was, and we're pretty certain the illness played into that redundancy, unfortunately. So that was a massive strain on us for quite a while. More these days, Sue's been on the drug trial and on a new drug now, which has certainly been life changing. Certainly from our experience, we've noticed some huge benefits, but there's still that level of, I think, unpredictability is probably a good way to sum it up. You simply don't know. A trip to Las Vegas 3 years ago, and then Sue joined like the family on a camping trip. Realised after that she'd probably overdone it a little bit, sort of 3 days in Vegas, and then 4 or 5 days camping, and that sent her into a major attack. And it's still that kind of stuff that, there's just that level of unpredictability, which can sometimes really catch you off guard. You think everything's absolutely fine, and then it sort of raises its ugly head once again. So, like I said, the drug that she's on now has changed our lives for definite. But you've still got that in the back of your mind. You've got to plan for the unexpected in the best possible way. So,
and living with some kind of caution always.
Definitely, yeah.
So, Antony, I'll come to you. What do you think's been the worst or the hardest thing about living with porphyria?
I think probably this. I'm quite glad I had a few minutes to think about that, to be honest. Because I'm going to split it down into two things, really. I think in early life, as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, I think the biggest impact was self-confidence. Mm-hmm. Constantly, being different to people, failing at trying to participate in all the other things that kids are doing, fun, sport, camping, etc. Massive impact in terms of your own self-esteem, self-confidence, and that's, I guess when I'm under pressure, that I do still notice that comes through even at my grand old age of over 50 now. I think that probably ultimately being diagnosed with EPP probably helped that a little bit with it. I got somewhere to channel it, and certainly getting involved with BPA and really exploring EPP from a scientific point of view, from a sort of feeling part of something point of view, has had a real beneficial impact there. And having a strong family around me ultimately. But at some point in the early, when I was growing up, I thought, how am I going to get a girlfriend? Whoever's going to want to spend their life with someone who can't go on normal holidays, without blowing up, who can't do this, can't do that. It's ultimately, I've got lucky. I've got a strong family around me, and that does help. So I guess coming to the sort of second phase of my life, I guess it's compromise is the biggest impact of EPP. Every day, especially when it's bright, from this time of year through to October, every day I'm balancing off what I want to do against what I can do. Especially if it's something that involves more than one day, like a holiday. Holidays are incredibly stressful times. You're compromising what you can do with the family all the time, and the biggest compromise is being able to fully immerse yourself in the fun things in life. I still notice it myself, sort of reacting very differently to other people when fun and just throwing the shackles off and becoming carefree. The opportunities come around. I'm always looking at, sort of seem to have a sixth sense which is focused on the environment around me rather than just living in the moment.
So that's a very similar point to what Ian brought up about the caution, and the always having that element in mind that you can just fully be immersed in everything without that caution. So it's interesting that even though you're both coming from such different perspectives on this, actually that same thing's arisen for both of you. So I'm going to go into something slightly different now. I was going to ask you, Antony, whether you think there's anything positive you can think of about having EPP. Are there any positive things that have emerged from your life, or anything positive that you can think of? It's probably a little bit more tricky. I maybe should have given you longer to think about this.
I'm glad I'm going second.
It's a really difficult one, I guess.
Yeah.
Ultimately, as I said, compromise is a massive factor. So, trying to take the positives out of compromise is very difficult. I think probably the one thing it's made me tenacious.
Yeah.
I've developed an ability to problem solve and troubleshoot.
Okay.
Through that natural sort of process that sort of seems to go about working things out. And I guess,
and that is a positive.
Tenacity, and also, be able to take the hard knocks and get back up again. Now, I know that's not possible for all people, but I guess because EPP comes and goes in bouts, it knocks you down. It leads you to some really dark places when you have a real painful episode. And I admit that I've been there in the worst places, but ultimately because they're temporary and they last days and take weeks to overcome psychologically, I guess you do know that when times are tough, you do find a way of pulling through them, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm going to come to you now, Ian. Hopefully you've had a chance to have a little think about that one. What kind of positives can you think of, if there are any, about living with a condition like that?
It's quite a strange question, because it does make you think. But I guess one thing, first of all, is you kind of realise how close-knit you become, and the support that you give each other. That really hits home. A lot of people have commented to me, a lot of friends over the years, about how close-knit me and Sue seem, which is lovely to hear, and certainly the family around us as well. It's a great unit, and everyone is very, very supportive. So there's that's a plus out of it. I think the other thing as well, and certainly thinking back to the earlier days, it kind of makes you appreciate those good times even more. And that sounds really, really cliche, but it really does. When you can't go out and do stuff, or because Sue wasn't feeling up to it, she's not feeling 100%, that kind of stuff. The times that you can, you don't take those for granted, kind of thing, and you go out and you do enjoy yourself. Like I say, we still could go on holidays, faced with some challenges, still do things, go to concerts, that kind of stuff. Did I really? That's because we're going downhill. We're going downhill, that's why. But that's just stuff like that. You don't take it for granted, and you appreciate it a hell of a lot more. Yeah. I think that they're two of the good things to come out of it. Yeah.
Value these things more.
Indeed, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm not sure what other questions I've got available for you. What are you guys most looking forward to in Awareness Week this week? So I'll come to you first, Antony.
I think for me, it's got to be the EPP session.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting year. We've got the Mitsubishi trial starting in the UK. Rolls starts in Manchester. I think the first patient had their screening visit last week. So, so it's going to be an interesting year. So, it'd be interesting to see what comes out of the EPP session. Always got to be my sort of priority. And then I guess the family session next week.
We've also got lots of things coming up in terms of the BPA. We've got some projects that we're hoping to support people more with things like mental.
Yeah.
I think I froze for a second then, I'm not sure. But yes,
and then next Saturday as well, the family. It's difficult living with porphyria when you're younger. So I think anything we can do to bring the kids along is important. Yeah.
I agree completely. And Ian, what are you looking forward to?
I mean, for me, it's just that whole thing about awareness. I think, like Anthony's just said, like there's children out there with this, with one of the strands of this awful illness, and it's kind of just raising that awareness for people just to understand it in a bit more detail. Be that friends, family, dare I say, it could be clinicians sometimes as well. You just want that, that awareness to get out there, so the next generation, have got are much more equipped to be able to deal with it in a better way.
I think that's it, and that's our focus completely on giving them the tools they need to be able to do that and have that confidence. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring up at this point that I maybe have forgotten to bring up? I'll come to you first, Antony.
I think okay. I'm a bit knackered, to be honest.
What about you, Ian? Are you short of breath yet, or do you want to bring anything up?
I'm definitely short of breath. I think every time you've asked me a question, we tend to go uphill as well. No, nothing else from me. No, it's been good to chat about this kind of stuff. Go on. No, I just say, it's we're, certainly from a partner's perspective, it is sometimes good to speak to other people, because you don't. It's not the feeling of being lonely, and hey, I'm not the patient here, so to speak. But it's good to sort of chat with other people about stuff, because you share experiences, and you find it very, very quickly that you're not alone in this kind of thing as well.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's been great to just have a bike ride with you again, Ian.
Weren't as hilly as London, was it?
No.
Sorry, I should say.
I went for the easy route today. So now we've got to talk all the way. Tell us
a little bit, Antony. At the minute, I can see on the Zwift, I can see there's lots of people there now. So how does that integrate?
Okay, so normally when you're into Zwift, you sort of just join the standard crowds and ride. But what we did earlier on was just have a meetup, which you can join with your friends, people who know you on Zwift. So like Ian, we're connected there. So we just created a meetup where we could exclude everyone else from that ride. What happened then? We went around the full circuit, which was, I think, it's about 10 miles or something. And at that point, you sort of drop back into the normal world. But that's why everyone else has appeared. Yeah. So it's a little bit more difficult to keep track of Ian.
I think I'm trying to play catch up with you now, I think.
Yeah, and you see we've got some runners there as well. It's not just cycling, you can run in here as well, so you can connect treadmills up to it, etc. It's a game, for people who are compromised in terms of being able to exercise outdoors. This sort of thing is a game changer. It really is.
It absolutely is. I can see the potential. I really can.
And you can spend hundreds and thousands of pounds worth on the kit, but I'm just working with a basic setup here. I'm using a standard computer. I think you're using an iPad, are you, Ian?
Just on my iPhone. Yeah.
iPhone, yeah. I've got a relatively cheap cycle trainer and a bike sitting on. Yeah.
And it's just your normal bike, is it, that you'd normally?
My normal road bike, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So that's really good to know too.
And as a monthly subscription, but it's much less than the gym, so yeah.
Always good. So if there isn't anything else you guys would like to bring up, then I probably should say thank you to you both. I'm impressed that you both managed to do that while cycling and chatting the whole time. So yeah, thank you to you both, and shall we end that right there?